Boy, there's controversy too. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Davante Adams wants out from the Raiders.
Unbelievable. I have never seen in modern day sports the kind of dysfunction we have from everything that circles around Mark Davis's Raiders. Whether it was Oakland Raiders where they didn't win any games, to the Las Vegas Raiders where they've never really been able to do anything in the playoffs, they're always a franchise that's attracted to the shiny object. And more times than not, make a trade or sign a big money free agent, the shiny object shows up and it turns out to be stained. It turns out to be flawed, or it turns out to be a bad investment. And now this is happening. This guy, Davante Adams, really fine wide receiver, 890 receptions, 96 touchdowns, and a really good career. He's had enough with the coach. Antonio Pierce, his job might be in jeopardy because he's working for a pretty stable, no-nonsense guy in the general manager, Tom Telesco. And Antonio Pierce, week by week, goes off the deep end and does something, says something that offends people. 2 weeks ago, he blamed a bunch of players for making business decisions not to compete in a game, a.k.a. you bleep and quit. Now, this past week, on his social media account, somebody does something about Davante Adams, and Antonio Pierce kinds of signs off on the ideology, trade him. And by the way, Antonio Pierce just got hit by the NCAA for all the garbage you did at Arizona State. Got put him on probation. He's been hit with an 8-year ban by the NCAA ever coaching anywhere again. So this guy is all over the parking lot. He may sales pitch you. He might be an emotional leader, but they haven't won crap with him as a head coach. And now he seems to be offending everybody. And now he's offended the wide receiver, Davante Adams. He's asked to be traded. Now, the Raiders supposedly are asking for a second-round pick, which is awful high for a 32-year-old receiver. They might take a third-round pick as long as there's a player that's thrown into the deal. But Davante Adams is owed $18 million a year for the next 3 seasons, this year and the 2 following. Clubs are saying, we're not taking on that contract and giving you a big price for a 32-year-old. Raiders, you're going to pay a piece of the $18 million. So that's where it is. The general sentiment around the NFL from the people I network with is he's going to get moved. We hear the Jets. That's a lineage with Aaron Rodgers. Jets got their own problem. I was told the Jets said, we will talk to you about Adams if we get permission to talk about restructure of his contract. We'll give you Hassan Reddick, our holdout linebacker, who's forfeited so much money, it's utterly ridiculous. You can talk to him about an extension before the trade goes through. So maybe there's something there that's going to happen. There was a rumor, Kansas City. That makes no sense at all. The Raiders are not going to deal with the enemy in the division. There is talk Cleveland. Now, Cleveland's season's kind of unraveling. They got Amari Cooper. He's affordable via this contract extension he signed. Maybe Davante Adams for Amari Cooper straight up turns out to be the trade, but I don't know that Amari Cooper is the equal to Davante Adams on the field. There's supposedly 4 to 6 teams in total that have interest in Adams, but there's things holding this deal up, like we're not giving you a number 2 for a 32-year-old guy, or you got to pay a piece of what's left on the contract. Raiders, freaking dysfunction. I don't mean to insult Raider Nation. I don't mean to talk badly about anybody wearing the colors silver and bleak. But your franchise has been so dysfunctional for so long, going back to the Al Davis era into the Mark Davis era. How do you accept that? Why do you accept that? End of sermon from me. You can go back to church on Sunday. I'll go to the confessional. John, go ahead, respond to Adams and the Raiders.
Well, if he wants to trade, you got to let the guy be traded. I mean, you have to do that. It's weird because on one level, you're thinking, man, that would suck if you were employed somewhere, you had a disagreement with your boss, but you couldn't quit and get a job somewhere else. But you do have a contract with the Raiders, like you said, for 2 or 3 more years. Yep. So it gets tricky here. The right thing for the Raiders to do is just to unload him, just let's move this guy on. But you've talked a lot about Antonio Pierce is always kind of yapping about. And when I see him on the sidelines, he seems like a pretty quiet guy. So what's going on? Like you have a problem with his mouth.
He's a street guy. He runs his mouth all the time about all these different things. Players responded to it very early when he got there. And, he kind of made it come together, but then they didn't do it in the playoffs. And now it's just been controversy after controversy ever since the season began with this guy. I mean, it's just like he creates all these distractions. Damn, the job is hard enough. especially there with that roster, that quarterback, and you're doing this, and you're doing this to your top receiver. And by the way, they let their top running back to go to Green Bay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, dysfunction? Yes.
Yeah. And Josh Jacobs is having a nice year.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
So that's where we are with the Davante Adams thing.